Imagine you're living a comfortable life. You have a big family, a good home, wealth, and you're a respected figure in your community. Everything is set, then one day, out of the blue, you hear a voice. A voice no one else can hear. It tells you to leave everything behind. Your country, your relatives, your father's house, everything you've ever known. It promises to make you a great nation, to bless you, and to make your name great. But it doesn't tell you where you're going. All you have is a promise and a command. Go. What would you do? Would you think you're going crazy? Would you dismiss it, or would you pack your bags? This isn't the plot of a modern thriller. This is the true story of a man who lived 4,000 years ago. His name was Abram, later known as Abraham. He lived in a thriving, sophisticated city called Ur of the Chaldees, a metropolis of its time, filled with culture, commerce, and pagan gods. Abram wasn't a young man looking for adventure. He was 75 years old, an age when most people are settling down, not starting over, and his wife, Sarai, was 65. They were childless, which in their culture was a source of deep shame and sorrow. The promise of becoming a great nation must have sounded almost cruel, a bitter joke. Yet, the Bible tells us something astonishing. It says, "So Abram went, as the Lord had told him." Think about the sheer audacity of this decision. There were no maps, no GPS, no guarantee of safety. He was stepping out into the unknown, a vast, arid landscape, leading his wife, his nephew Lot, and all their possessions. Why? What could possibly compel a man to take such a radical, seemingly reckless leap of faith? This wasn't just a change of address, it was a complete severing of his identity. In that ancient world, your land, your family, your tribe, that was who you were. To leave it all was to become a nobody, a vulnerable wanderer at the mercy of foreign lands and hostile peoples. The voice that spoke to Abram was the voice of God, not one of the many moon gods or sun gods worshipped in Ur, but the one, true, unseen creator of the universe. This was a revolutionary concept. God wasn't a statue in a temple. He was a personal, speaking being who was initiating a relationship. This call wasn't just for Abram's benefit. It was the beginning of a plan that would change the entire course of human history. Through this one man and his descendants, God was going to reveal himself to the world and bring about a blessing for all of humanity. Abram didn't know all the details, he just knew he had to trust the one who called him. So, they set out. Their journey was not an easy stroll. It was a long, arduous trek of hundreds of miles. They journeyed from Ur to a place called Haran, where they settled for a time. It was there that Abram's father, Terah, passed away. Imagine the grief, the potential for doubt. Did I hear God correctly? Maybe I should have stayed, but the call persisted. After his father's death, God spoke to him again, reaffirming the command, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you." So Abram, now fully the patriarch of his clan, obeyed once more. He gathered his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. When they finally arrived in Canaan, what did they find? A lush paradise, a land flowing with milk and honey, ready and waiting for them. Not exactly. The Bible says the Canaanites were then in the land. It was already occupied. There were powerful city-states, different cultures, and potential enemies. God didn't just hand him a deed to a vacant property, he showed him a land that was already full. And yet, God appeared to Abram there and said, "To your offspring, I will give this land," another promise that seemed impossible. Abram was old, his wife was barren, and the land was taken. What did Abram do in response? He didn't raise an army. He didn't try to negotiate a real estate deal. He built an altar, right there, in the middle of a foreign, pagan land. He built an altar to the Lord and called on his name. It was an act of worship, a declaration of faith. It was him planting a flag, not of conquest, but of devotion. He was saying, "This land belongs to the God who promised it to me, and I belong to him." He journeyed through the land, from Shechem to the hills east of Bethel, and everywhere he went, he built altars. He was marking the promised land, not with fences, but with places of communion with God. But faith is not a smooth, upward climb. It's often tested in the valleys. Soon after arriving, a severe famine struck the land. The very land God had led him to could no longer support him. The promise seemed to be failing. Faced with starvation, Abram made a decision based on fear, not faith. He went down to Egypt, a land of plenty, but also a land of great power and potential danger. And here, his fear led him to a terrible mistake. He knew his wife Sarai was very beautiful. He was afraid that the Egyptians, especially Pharaoh, would kill him to take her. So he devised a plan. He told Sarai, "Say you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you." This was a half-truth. Sarai was his half-sister, but it was a deception born of fear. He was trying to protect himself instead of trusting God to protect him. And just as he feared, when the Egyptians saw Sarai's beauty, she was taken into Pharaoh's palace. Pharaoh treated Abram well for her sake, giving him sheep and cattle, donkeys, servants, and camels. Abram got richer, but he had lost his wife. He had compromised his integrity and put the mother of the promised nation in grave danger. He had traded God's protection for the illusion of security. The promise was hanging by a thread. How could God's plan work now? Sarai was in the harem of the most powerful man in the world. But God did not abandon Abram, even in his failure. The Bible says the Lord inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife Sarai. God intervened directly and powerfully. Pharaoh, realizing something was terribly wrong, summoned Abram. Can you imagine that confrontation? The mighty Pharaoh, questioning this wandering nomad. "What have you done to me?" he demanded. "Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go." Abram was rebuked by a pagan king. He was escorted out of Egypt in shame. He left with all his wealth, but also with a powerful lesson burned into his heart. His clever plan had failed miserably. It was God's direct, miraculous intervention that saved the day. He learned that God's promises are not sustained by human cleverness or deceit, but by God's own power and faithfulness. He didn't need to lie or scheme to protect himself. He just needed to trust. This story is so powerful because it's so real. Abraham is not a superhero in a cape. He's a human being, just like us. He has moments of incredible faith where he leaves everything to follow an unseen God. And he has moments of crippling fear where he makes terrible decisions. He is a work in progress, and this is just the beginning of his journey. There would be more tests, more waiting, more failures, and more victories. The Call of Abraham is a story that echoes through the ages. It's a story about the nature of faith. Faith is not the absence of fear or doubt. It's obeying despite the fear. It's taking the next step even when you can't see the whole staircase. It's trusting in the character of the one who calls you, more than you trust in your own circumstances or your own abilities. Abraham's journey teaches us that God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. He took an old, childless man from a pagan city and launched a plan to bless the entire world. His story is a testament that with God, the impossible becomes possible, and our greatest weaknesses become the stage for His greatest strengths. Abraham's story invites us to ask ourselves, what is our your? What comfortable place is God calling us to leave? And do we have the faith to say yes, to step out into the unknown, trusting His promise? Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the powerful narratives of the Bible. See you next time.